would like to invite Dr. Charles Whitley to please deliver an invocation for us.
Please stand. Father God, we thank you that we are survivors of the terrible storm, terrible earthquake, hurricane. We thank you that we are able to assemble here to share in this experience. We thank you for those who have been inspired to capture some of the experiences of the hurricane and to preserve them in print and other form for future generations. And we pray, O God, that you will continue to inspire others to do the same as you see fit. We pray, O God, that you will bless the proceedings here this afternoon. And may it be an opportunity for us all to reflect on what we have experienced. And may this afternoon's activity heighten those experiences and help us to understand our role, our place in this territory and in the world in general. Because we are here for a purpose. And may you help us to understand what that purpose is so that we will be able to do that purpose for you correctly, orderly, and in the right way. The right time and for the right purposes. So bless us. Amen.
Honorable Premier, Dr. Deolanda Smith, Honorable Deputy Premier, Dr. Kedrick Pickering, His Lordship, Mr. Barry Leon, the Honorable Member for the Third, Mr. Julian Fraser, other senior officials, guests, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good afternoon. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you here this afternoon to this special occasion. I must begin by admitting that I was not here for Armagh. I did not have that experience. But it was no less traumatic watching it on CNN and other networks and feeling your heart palpitate as you wonder what happened to the beloved BVI and to all of you. So we had our own Armagh experience, maybe it virtually. When I returned to the territory, I asked and I listened to the stories, and I concluded that a miracle happened in the BVI. I call it a miracle of biblical proportions. No less a miracle than the ones you read about in the Bible, Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah from the whale, the Red Sea parting. So, our Red Sea has parted, and here we are. And we're here to honor a young lady who captured that, whose stories I think will become almost biblical in the future because they exemplify the presence of God in this place. So today we're here to celebrate, we're here to acknowledge, and we're here to listen to the wisdom that allowed her to create the Irma Diaries. I'd like to recognize the presence of her mom, Ms. Irma Burnett, and her aunts. They're like a little army. I tell you, when they get together, they just make things happen. I was very honored that I was asked to do this. We're also family, so that helps. I'd like to recognize the presence of the former deputy governors, both Mr. Elton Georges, Ms. Tanya Pensala, other senior officials, Director of DPP, and permanent secretaries. My permanent secretary, I have to acknowledge her, Ms. Dawn Smith, somewhere there. And to each of you for being here this afternoon. I'd like to ask the director of the BVI Arbitration Center, who have graciously consented to allow us to have the event here this afternoon, to just come and give us an arbitration welcome. Ms. Janet Bryn.
Welcome to the BVI International Arbitration Center. Most, if not all of us, with the exception of Mr. Malone, would agree that this year, September in particular, makes this a year to remember. Having experienced or come close to experiencing what we thought were major hurricanes in the past, such as 1989 Hurricane Hugo, it would seem that we had been taking the idea of hurricanes for granted. Climate change is clearly not a myth, and it begs to question, have we been taking the idea of climate change for granted? Hurricane Irma passed through the British Virgin Islands in early September and inflicted widespread damage. Then in a space of 2 weeks, 2 more Category 5 hurricanes passed less than 200 miles from the BVI. I do believe this is saying something. As we gather here at the center to celebrate the launch of the book entitled Irma Diaries, I would like to humbly highlight that the BVI IAC has been very fortunate, having sustained only 2 broken windows. The center was actually one of few operational venues or facilities in the territory following the hurricanes. As a result, we made temporary space available for critical government offices in support of the recovery. So it's fitting that we share some reflection on climate change, not a reflection about whether or not it is real. It is, but rather how, as an institution in the BVI, we can play our part to help resolve climate change-related disputes. Throughout the world, things are slowly changing, such as in the Urgenda climate case in the Netherlands, the first case in which regular citizens have managed to hold their government accountable for taking insufficient action to keep them safe from dangerous climate change. Climate change has been and continues to be a topical subject the world over, as in the 2015 Paris Agreement, which set out some powerful and ambitious goals to keep the global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to strengthen the ability of countries to deal with the impacts of climate change. Reaching these ambitious goals will require a lot of investment across the globe in renewable energy efficiency, sustainable land use, and in climate-resilient infrastructures. These investments are likely to be cross-border in nature because the money does not always reside within the same borders as the need and opportunity for investment. This will happen not just in the BVI, but globally. This may well benefit the BVI through corporate structures, but it is important to note that no international legal instrument exists that incentivizes and protects green FDIs, and no legal mechanism exists to enforce them. The closest that exists is international arbitration. As an arbitral institution, we can help. We can help to implement and enforce emerging international sustainability principles, standards, and obligations. We can help maintain national and international climate change targets and objectives. And as the only fully fledged arbitration institution in the Caribbean, we feel confident we will find ways to get involved. More broadly, we think that the center has a role, and arbitration in general, a role to play in encouraging business and government commitments on climate change by providing an effective mechanism to resolve disputes. Today marks our first involvement in climate change, and certainly not our last. And with that said, I would like to welcome Angela Penn at the center for the launch of her book, Irma Diaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brin. I didn't quite anticipate that angle of an opportunity for arbitration, but I think that's well said. And certainly the Arbitration Center is resilient because it's still here, and we appreciate that. I would now invite Mr. Elton Georges to introduce the author. Mr. Georges.
Premier, the Honorable Orlando Smith seems to have left the room, but anyway, Premier and Deputy Premier, of course, other distinguished guests, of course, the lady of the moment, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening. Angela Burnett is a dedicated and innovative environmental manager and physical planner with an accomplished background in climate change, adaptation policy, and planning. She is also an effective and creative project leader with excellent problem solving, research, analysis, report writing, and presentation skills. Angela is passionate about applying her experience and skills towards building a more sustainable and progressive future for the Virgin Islands, in which environmental, social, and economic goals are wisely balanced. Angela was born and raised in the Virgin Islands, in these Virgin Islands. Her interest in the future sustainable development of the territory led her to pursue a career in the environment, or as one journalist, George Monbiot, suggests, we should start calling the living planet or the natural world. In 2007, she graduated from Brandeis University in Massachusetts, USA, with a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and sustainable development. Angela also holds a Master of City and Regional Planning degree from the Rutgers University Edward J. Bluestein, or in the States, I guess, Bluestein, School of Planning and Public Policy, with a dual focus in environmental and physical planning and housing and real estate, along with a certificate in management leadership from the Chartered Management Institute of the United Kingdom. I didn't know that before. I suppose we can say, and still we gaze, and still the wonder grows that one small head could carry all she knows. One small young head. Since 2008, Angela has served with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor as an environmental officer with a special focus on climate change, or climate breakdown, some people call it. In this role, Angela has designed and implemented public education programming, conducted a vulnerability and capacity assessment of the tourism sector to climate change, authored the territory's climate change policy, and helped lead the development of the Virgin Islands Climate Change Trust Fund. On completion of her master's degree, she spent a brief stint at the Town and Country Planning Department, during which she contributed to the framework for the National Physical Development Plan, as well as a draft road town plan. Angela has since returned to the ministry and continues to work closely with the climate change program there. She is also involved in major policy and in legislative initiatives, including the current development of a comprehensive environment bill. Apart from her contributions locally, Angela has worked for the Ocean Project, an international NGO based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs in Boston, Massachusetts. In her spare time, Angela mentors young people and tutors senior high school students in chemistry and physics at Star Tutoring, which she established 5 years ago. And I think we can see from that, and certainly from my knowledge of her, that Angela is a very serious person. And as I think George Lamigott was commented at his eulogy of the late, great Walter Rodney, seriousness is not a quality that brings a lot of comfort in our small territories. But she's a regular at Beef Island Beach. She's a passionate beachgoer and an avid swimmer. She also enjoys running, including participating in the HLSCC College Classic Series and salsa dancing. Talk about wise balancing. Angela has presented at many conferences in the Caribbean and elsewhere, and has published several academic and professional pieces. The Irma Diaries is her first book, and before I bring her on, a little tiny personal indulgence, so let me say that Angela, people who know me know I don't like the word proud. Remind me of proud flesh. And the Bible doesn't like proud. But Angela is my beloved goddaughter in whom I'm well pleased. There's Angela.
Right, so I was saying that I've spent the last 10 years educating about climate change and warning about the real possibility of these stronger hurricanes as a result of it. But Irma shocked even me. We know now in no uncertain terms what it is to go through a direct hit from a Category 5 hurricane. In fact, the strongest to ever make landfall in Atlantic history. But you won't find that fact anywhere on Google if you try to find it. Why? An interesting fact I learned along this journey is that when hurricanes strike small islands like ours, technically, they are not considered to be landfall events. Try telling that to any of us in this room. The experience of Irma cannot be captured in a few news headlines or even the apocalyptic images that lay bare the carnage that was unleashed on our lands. No. The experience of Irma is best captured in the stories, the survivor stories. They are very personal, harrowing yet amazing, inspiring, and even at times amusing. I have cried and laughed several times while writing this book. In the climate change arena, there's a term, climate refugee. I have to confess that I've always considered it a very extreme expression, an unlikely reality. But now, on the other side of Irma, for the first time, that term, a climate refugee, has a very real, tangible, and now feel to me. It has occurred to me very early on that Irma was no freak event. Sadly, Irma is likely just a glimpse of our future in a changing climate. And it hit home that the islands I have always called and cherished as home could one day become uninhabitable at the hands of a very harsh climate. The term climate refugee should forever remain a theoretical extreme. This must not happen to us. Inspiration for the Irma Diaries came just 2 weeks into me volunteering with the National Emergency Operations Center. It was there that I learned that actually 4 persons had died in Hurricane Irma as a result, a direct result of it, as opposed to the 15 to 20 that were rumored in the few days after the storm. While those numbers were a lot more palatable, really I found them unbelievable. And I became fascinated by how people must have survived. And I realized that I could use what must be these amazing stories of survival to try to help people connect on a very personal and human level to climate change, which for many people around the world still remains a vague and distant concept. The reality is that we only act about the things that we care about, and in most instances, you have to have a personal connection to something in order to care. And so I set out to collect these survivor stories, and the Irma Diaries was born. As you may know by now, I will be giving 25% of the net proceeds of the sale of this book to the Virgin Islands Climate Change Trust Fund in perpetuity, and in addition, another 25% to the 25 survivors that have contributed their stories to this book to make it possible. And my hope is that they become ambassadors, champions of how we rebuild and do so more resiliently, because we all have a responsibility to adapt to this new future. Now, writing the Irma Diaries has been a very powerful experience, and I must say, an exercise in great faith. It has not been easy. I started this on the 2nd of October, and it has literally consumed my life. Just over the past 2 months, I've written a book almost 300 pages long under very difficult circumstances on the ground, including a curfew. I have been stopped one too many times now by police with drawn machine guns, late nights on my way home after many long hours communing with the Irma Diaries. I am among those that still does not have electricity, and of course, in the days after Irma, none of us did. And so, in the early days in particular, I spent many nights, by hand, by candlelight, writing the Irma Diaries. And this is how it started. Now that it's actually a book, I wish I had taken a bit better care of this. So, small things can grow, just requires a whole lot of investment. Right, so it actually did come to fruition, and I am here today. Along my journey, I have met so many amazing people, so many amazing families, and many of them were not able to be here today. Some circumstances were so extreme that families had to evacuate. Others happen not to be here because they've been able to escape for the holiday season. And one of the things I'm very proud about is that I've been able to capture stories from all of our main islands. So those on the sister islands, because of transportation and practicalities, could not be here this evening. But I would like to invite those who are here, I know you're spread throughout the audience, to quickly stand so that you can be acknowledged, please. So in a nutshell, the experience has been absolutely exhausting, but every time I would capture a new story, it would propel me and drive me forward. These stories are truly incredible, they're powerful, and they deserve to be shared, because the world needs to know what it is to live through a powerful Category 5 hurricane, and what it is to be an islander literally on the front lines of this thing we call climate change. So it has really been my deep privilege and honor to capture these stories and to be able to share them with you. I trust that they will become an important part of our history, but more so, I hope that they will help to save our future. By supporting this book and by sharing it with others, please help me to make these stories the last warning that the world needs to wake up and act. The families that you've just seen and the ones who could not be here, they have invited me into their living rooms, sometimes just the rubble that was left of their homes, and more importantly, they invited me into their lives. I've been able to build very deep and personal connections with these survivors as I learned about their life before Irma, the days building up to Irma, what they were thinking, feeling, expecting, how they were preparing, the day of Irma, and as one of my survivors said, walking me through her blow by blow. The day after Irma, and sort of taking in the devastation for the first time and reacting to it, and finally their lessons learned. All of these are beautifully wrapped up in each of their survivor stories. This afternoon, I'm just going to share with you and introduce you to one family and their survivor story. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gunpoint. Diane Drayton is a strong mother of two and a grandmother. She spent Hurricane Irma in the family home her father originally built and she later expanded to house her own family at Todman Estate, Tortola. Diane's mother, Miss Adeline, who happens to just be my grandmother's childhood best friend, a darling 87-year-old, still resided at home under Diane's attentive care. Both in their late 20s now, her daughters, Tishan and Chelsea, along with Chelsea's adorable 3-year-old son, Micah, had moved to their own places. However, the family came together at the familiar home at Todman Estate to ride out Irma. They were joined by a good family friend, Christine, who would have otherwise spent Irma alone. As the press officer for the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, I was well informed about Irma and had been tracking the storm closely. Leaning on the side of caution, I was prepared for a direct hit, despite the chance of it going north. While the situation and threat was serious, it all seemed manageable up until that weekend when it was still in the realm of a reasonable storm, a Category 3. The house had withstood several Category 3 and 4 hurricanes without serious damage. I remember hearing on Monday or Tuesday that Irma had strengthened to a Category 5 with sustained winds of 175 miles per hour and then 185 miles per hour. Disbelief was the feeling. Something must be wrong, I thought. That's unreal, unheard of. Those numbers can't be right. Something must be wrong, I kept telling myself. Nothing can withstand that kind of wind force. The situation was unnerving. Sitting at the crest of a hill, fully exposed to the north side of the island, I knew that geographically, our house was in a vulnerable spot. But you can't pick up your house and move it. You can only do everything in your power to prepare, and prepare we did. We had made all the plans to make sure by that Tuesday, the day before the storm, the house was squared away. I didn't cut any corners. Our trusty handyman, Hugh, ensured that all the hurricane shutters, those on the upstairs as well as the downstairs unit where Mom and I lived, were securely in place. Outside of the fact that we had lived downstairs, we had made a strategic and conscious decision to ride out the storm there. With our hurricane shutters in place, solid walls around us, and partly sitting under a concrete roof in the back half of the unit, though naturally nervous, we felt reasonably safe. In my wildest dreams, I would never have predicted the reality that unfolded. Tuesday night found us all at Todman Estate. We secured the cars and did some last-minute preparations around the house. Already, every now and then, you could hear the howling gusts sweep up and over the hill, forewarning of Irma's arrival. I remember viewing a video sent through WhatsApp of Irma pounding one of the other islands on its way to us. Irma was blowing trees across the landscape like cotton balls on toothpicks. I thought, God has to intervene here. Anticipating downed lines by sometime early in the morning, we used the last hours of communication to reach out to friends in the outside world and request prayers. We woke up to no electricity the following morning. With the winds already picking up, we decided to quickly cook something to eat and shut off the gas while it was still safe enough to go outside. As the morning wore on and the storm really set in, the family settled in the living room. We conversed and sang together. Unknown to us at the time, those would be our last few minutes in that room. The small rectangular glass strip across the top of the wooden living room entrance door allowed us to witness the first strike. It started when the big mango tree that towered over the outside deck gave way, collapsing in front of the entrance door. Shortly after, we heard a relentless banging coming from upstairs. Peeping out, Tishan realized that a hurricane shutter on one of the windows had come loose and decided that she could fix it. She braved the storm and went upstairs. Taking longer than expected, Chelsea went to help. Thankfully, they both made it back unscathed. With that fire under control, it was only moments before another caught on, and the fire intensified. It was now the hurricane shutter in my bedroom that had come loose and started to slam against the closed glass window. We shut the bedroom door that led to the living room to isolate it. Behind the closed door, we listened as the shutter beat the window without mercy. Each blow sounded out worse than the one before. Then there was quiet. The banging had suddenly stopped as the winds finally took the shutter away. In Chelsea's words, outside was stark white. It was as if someone had hung a sheet over the windows. Relief and worry hit us at the same time. While safe from a shattering window for a moment, one by one, our hurricane shutters seemed to be peeling off under the unnatural force of Irma's winds. It was then that we decided it was time to take Mother into the safe room that I had prepared. Strong at heart, but now frail, walking about for her is slow. The room was at the very back of the house, tucked into the hillside, and was originally used by my older daughter. In preparation, I had cleared it of any unnecessary stuff and stocked it with our hurricane essentials. We made her comfortable on the bed and went back out between the kitchen and the hallway to the safe room to keep tabs on things. Intense noises filled every space. We continued to pray. Water started pouring through under the kitchen door as if a fire hose had been turned on outside. Instinctively, I attempted to keep pace, mopping, but before long realized that that was pointless. Pacing the hall, Chelsea watched as the dark shadow beneath the closed door to the bedroom disappeared and was replaced by light. She instantly understood the meaning of that silent warning. "Oh my God!" Chelsea's scream shattered the air above Irma's voice. With an animal-like protective instinct, Tishan yelled, "Put Micah in the room!" She immediately snatched him up and tossed him down the hall into the safe room. Thankfully, he landed on the bed and nestled next to his great-granny. Christine and I scrambled behind Chelsea and Tishan into the safe room with only enough time to slam the door behind us before we heard what sounded like a massive explosion. In one fell swoop, everything north of that room, including the 2 bedrooms and the living room, was no longer standing, and the daylight, previously shut out by hurricane shutters, walls, and a roof, poured in. The house was an open sepulcher. There was no time to take in what was happening around us, only time to save our lives. We put Mom and Micah as far back in the room as possible and immediately threw ourselves up against the doors. I held one door while Chelsea, Tishan, and Christine all pressed up against the other door, which faces the north. With the rooms beyond it gone, the door was taking the full force of Irma's winds. Peeping through the louvered door into the kitchen, I watched as the wind and rain joined forces to entirely and completely trash our home. Nothing remained in place. Even heavy bookshelves were hauled around like matchboxes. Not satisfied with the havoc she was wreaking in every other room in our house, Irma wrestled ruthlessly to get into our safe room. I could feel the interior sheetrock wall of the room vibrating violently. I remember standing in fear that the wall would fall in and crush us. I looked across at Chelsea, and she was shaking like a leaf. Somehow, she said I managed to appear calm. I think she described it best, how we all felt in that moment. That level of fear is equivalent to being held at gunpoint. Completely helpless and fearful for our lives, we did the only thing that we could. We prayed out loud, crying out to God for mercy and help. For as long as Irma raged on, we kept our prayers up, and we worshipped without ceasing. Then, in answer to prayer, the eye came. The winds died down, and we relaxed our hold on the doors. We were ankle deep in water and knew we had to get out. We simply couldn't stay there for round 2, and we didn't know how much time we had. The girls rushed ahead to scope out an escape plan, while Christine and I figured out how to get Mom out safely. We climbed over mounds of rubble that represented our lives and out the front door. The vehicles could offer no help. They were pinned in by a section of roof. Tashan suggested we try to find a neighbor on the street who might just be checking on others while it was safe to do so. We each had a to-go bag packed with important documents, and that's all we took. Again, Chelsea expressed it well. In that moment, you realize you only have 2 hands, and so you can only take 2 things. It forces you to think. It's a reality check. What are the 2 most important things to you? She took her son and her bag with her travel documents. Having survived the first round without a hard punch and out looking for those who might have suffered a knockout like we did, our neighbor Earl found us before we could even start the journey down. He cleared the way as we lifted our mother over poles, galvanized, and transformers down the hill to his fortress. Looking around and seeing the other houses at least standing, I remember thinking, is it just me? Unfortunately, I know now that it certainly wasn't. We made it inside in the nick of time. Earl had a spare room on the bottom floor of his 2-story building where he made us comfortable. The second round was mild in comparison. Completely exhausted from the ordeal and still in a state of shock, we quietly sat through the second half of the storm. At the same time, I was conscious of and worried about my elderly aunt who lived close by. I monitored the winds carefully, waiting for the earliest opportunity to steal out and check on her. We set out as night was starting to shut in. Those were intense, long minutes. We could see that the roof was gone and all the windows blown out. We circled the house several times, calling out for minutes. No answer came back. As Fair was on the verge of panic, a faint voice finally echoed, "We are here." It was her traumatized granddaughter's voice, traveling from the tub in the back of the house where they were hunkered down. We took them back with us. Earl's home became our refuge. From the time of the eye until now, we've lived there on open welcome. If I find any humor in the events of 6th and 7th September, it would be the sight of all 7 of us women smartly dressed up in Earl's very manly shorts, shoes, and shirts, which were the only option for dry clothing. My expression for Irma is life-altering. From now on, the reference for time will be pre-Irma and post-Irma. It will take a long time to really process what has happened to us. For the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't know what to do next. The forced decisions post-Irma have been agonizing. Homeless and not even able to find a habitable apartment to rent on island, our entire family has been forced to migrate. Our cats, true members of the family, have been given up for adoption overseas. Valuable lessons, however, were learned in this experience, 2 of which I can recount right now. Firstly, your shelter, your home, your refuge should never be taken for granted. Secondly, you shouldn't fill it with clutter. I live now as lightly as I can. We definitely had too much stuff. We all do. Irma came to say, live a little lighter on the planet. As I rebuild my life, I will be very wary of the stuff I acquire along the way. Thank you. Now, I want to guarantee you that although these stories are written in my words, with the words of the survivors interspersed at places, these stories are entirely unembellished and 100% true to the facts as shared with me during the interviews which I conducted with each of the survivors. So at this juncture, I would like to invite up the Honorable Premier. Is he still in the room? So while he's coming, I'll take this opportunity because I've had many, many questions about this. In fact, it's almost been impossible to walk around town, maybe in the last 2 weeks, without somebody stopping me and asking me, where's the book? Where can I get a copy? And I have to say that originally, when I conceived this book, my intention was to just have it be an electronic publication. So it's available right now on Amazon.com, but I'm not sure I would be able to live here much longer if I didn't satisfy the local demand to have a hard copy, something that they could give to a friend. And so I've tried to satisfy that demand. However, doing so takes time. So while this evening I do not have hard copies of the book on hand, you will have the opportunity to order your hard copy, and it should be here sometime in January. When you do so, you will receive a lovely gift certificate for the Irma Diaries. So those of you who've been anxious to give it as a gift under the tree, you can do it that way. So at this point, Honorable Premier, I'd like to just invite you forward for a brief presentation. It is my honor to give you this certificate for the Irma Diaries as a gift to the National Archives of the Virgin Islands, where I would like a copy of the Irma Diaries, compelling survivor stories from the Virgin Islands, to be permanently housed as an important part of our history.
I want to accept this gift certificate with gratitude from the author of the book, the Irma Diaries. I think it's an important part of our history because what happened here in the BVI is something that was unprecedented, unknown, unexpected, a trio of disasters that had not been seen in the Caribbean before. The fact that we have, we're lucky and fortunate enough that we only had 5 persons who died as a result of those events. That was good, and we had to give thanks to the Lord, good Lord, for allowing that to happen. But now, as we see, look around us, places getting cleaned up, and the fact that the trees are growing back and whatnot, it gives us a sense of regrowth, renewal, and this is what we after as far as the whole of the BVI is concerned, right? But even as we do that, this will keep us in mind, keep us to bear in mind what we've been through, because there's nothing as inspiring going forward as knowing what has happened to us in the past, right? I want to apologize for my popping in and out because I'm in the midst of a serious discussion about this whole recovery effort, and which is urgent and pressing. That's why I'm back and forth, right? But I had to come to this receive this. Thank you much.
And finally, I would like to make a presentation to a member of the Climate Change Trust Fund board. Unfortunately, the chairman of the board, Mr. Edward Childs, could not be here this evening as he's traveling, but I'm happy to present my pledge to the board to Dr. Kathy Smith, who is a very able member of the board. If you could come forward to receive, I'll just read what it says. It's a pledge to our future, and it says, out of a deep and abiding love for country, and with great respect for the important role the Virgin Islands Climate Change Trust Fund must play in safeguarding our future in a changing climate, it is my humble honor to pledge 25% of the net proceeds of the sale of the Irma Diaries, compelling survivor stories from the Virgin Islands, to the Trust Fund in perpetuity. It is my hope that this donation will help the Trust Fund fulfill its noble cause.
On behalf of the chairman and members of the BVI Climate Change Trust Fund Board, I would like to recognize the protocol already established and also recognize the presence of another board member I see in the audience, Ms. Shannon Gore. The chairman, Ed Childs, extends his deep regret that he's not able to attend today's launch of the Irma Diaries due to travel arrangements and has asked me to make the following remarks on his behalf. Wednesday, 6th of September, was not an ordinary day for the BVI. The events of that day and the aftermath will forever be etched in the memory of those who experienced Hurricane Irma firsthand, and those overseas who could only pray that their loved ones would have survived. For days after, social media was abuzz with frantic messages, trying to track down friends and family members and what had become of them, messages that frequently could not be answered as communications within the BVI were literally non-existent. In the days, weeks, and now months that have passed since Irma visited our shores, the islands and people of the BVI have demonstrated a resilience that was hard to imagine in the first few hours after emerging from whatever shelter we had and witnessing a new world. From the first shoots of green on the decimated trees to witnessing scores of volunteers help rebuild homes and roofs, the territory is starting a rebirth. The devastated Category 5 hurricane passed through the northern Caribbean from the 5th to the 8th of September, before hitting Florida as a Category 4 hurricane, although by this time the intensity had lessened and the impacts were less severe. Hurricane Irma reached the peak intensity on the 6th of September, the day the eye passed through the BVI. Sustained wind speeds reached 185 miles per hour with gusts up to 220 miles per hour, although twisters within the hurricane created additional damage. This somewhat analytical description of the hurricane belies its intensity, the likes of which people in the world have never experienced. We were fortunate that the storm passed over the BVI during the day, and also that the hurricane force winds did not extend out by too many miles. Still, the destruction wrought in the hour before and after the eye passed over the BVI resulted in an estimated $3.2 billion worth of damage, countless homes and businesses being damaged or destroyed, and the displacement of much of the population. In time, people will look back on Irma and dissect the hurricane, whether in terms of its physical properties and intensity scales, how the government responded, and what help came from the international community, or perhaps the psychological impacts on those who had experienced Irma firsthand. For sure, many will wonder how, with all that destruction, so few lives were lost on 6th of September. Although we recognize that Irma is still taking its toll, but for now, we live in the present, an island and people seeking to rebuild, perhaps unsure of the future, but determined to see the BVIs emerge from a devastated territory to a country where resilience, home, and forbearance will shape whatever future we have. While most of us were seeking to put our lives back together however we could, one person was determined that the stories behind Irma would not be lost in time. Angela Burnett Penn, an environmental officer responsible for climate change in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, recognized the importance of speaking to people whose lives had literally been turned upside down and ensuring their experiences of 6th of September were recorded. These combined stories from over 20 people now form the Irma Diaries. The stories will make harrowing reading, taking the reader into the storm itself and the impacts on buildings and people alike. For those who went through Irma, it may awaken memories of that fateful day, while for others, the stories will provide an insight into how one of the most powerful hurricanes the world has witnessed changed the lives of those whose stories are told. Perhaps more importantly, Angela recognized that the Irma Diaries could be a conduit to bring to the reader the impacts of climate change on a small island nation. While the Caribbean has experienced countless hurricanes over the millennia, Hurricane Irma on 6th of September and Hurricane Maria, which skirted the BVI just 2 weeks later during the night of 19th-20th September, were two extremely powerful Category 5 hurricanes, the likes of which the BVI had not witnessed before, at least within living memory. The impacts of these two hurricanes have raised questions as to the cycle of hurricane events, which scientists predict that these storms, scientists do predict that these storms will become more severe and, unfortunately, more frequent. This is the result of climate change. Looking forward, the BVI needs to adapt to changing weather patterns. The latter part of 2017 witnessed not just two powerful hurricanes, but also some devastating flooding events, starting with the flood of early August. Rising sea levels, an increase in the number of high-intensity hurricanes, and the risk of flooding will become part of our future. The Irma Diaries seeks to raise awareness of the public to climate change and the part we can play as a society to change the way we impact the world, as Angela herself has said. The book is an avenue for the voices of small islanders who lived through this horrific event to be heard globally. I hope that through these stories, readers around the world can connect more personally with what it means to be on the front lines of climate change and resolve to act. On behalf of the BVI Climate Trust Fund Board, I would like to thank Angela for her dedication to the work of the fund. Established at a board in July this year, the impacts of Irma have brought home to all of us the devastating consequences of climate change on a small community. Angela has guided the board as it establishes the operational manual, our template for the fund, and now starts on creating the business plan to guide the board in its fundraising efforts. More importantly, Angela, through her publication of the Irma Diaries, has raised awareness, not just of climate change, but also of the fund itself. Angela has generously donated 25% of the Irma Diaries to the fund. In perpetuity, Angela, thank you. As we move towards the end of 2017, many of us will be turning our attention to Christmas. Always a reminder of a season where families mean so much, where the young children are opening presents under a tree, Christmas Eve Mass or the Christmas Day service, and of course the obligatory Christmas Day meal. Let us remember those who have lost their lives as a consequence of Irma, those whose homes and businesses have been destroyed, and for the many who are separated from their loved ones this Christmas. May 2018 be a year of hope, but above all, a recognition that climate change is here and now, and how we act as we rebuild the BVI will have consequences for our future. To Angela, may you have a blessed Christmas, knowing that the task of publishing the Irma Diaries is complete. And on a personal note, I just wanted to say that Angela, I've always known Angela because she is a younger cousin of mine. I've always thought that Angela was a very adorable younger cousin and a very smart younger cousin. But I never knew before joining this board and working with the very pleasant members of the board and Angela, the dedication, the commitment, the understanding of complex issues, the passion for climate change issues and issues to do with the environment.
Thank you very much. That was a very gripping story. I can see the movie now. Yes. Thank you, Angela. I've always, even before she became famous as an author, when I worked in London, I saw her shuffle through to Brussels and other parts of the world speaking about climate change and keeping company with people who have been decades in the area, and always admire her commitment and her strength in trying to champion the cause and champion BVI. I've always referred to her as one of BVI's rising stars. So, Angela, you've made your mark, and this mark, I'm sure, will grow. And thank you, Kathy, for your remarks as well. Your stories reminded us that there were many survivors, but there are some that did not survive. So I'd like to ask us all to stand for one moment of silence of those, in memory of those who passed and those who have subsequently passed following the hurricane. Thank you. You may be seated. Climate change is an issue that the BVI has led and has been championed, and we have our own climate change champion, not just at Angela's level, but at the level of the leadership of the territory. And I've also witnessed this gentleman's moving throughout the world representing BVI and fighting for the environmental causes that are so near and dear to the BVI legacy. So it's with pleasure that I invite the Minister, the Honorable Deputy Premier and Minister for Natural Resources and Labor, responsible for establishing the first climate change trust fund in the Caribbean. That's noteworthy. So please join me in welcoming my namesake, Dr. Kedrick Pickering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to acknowledge the presence of my honorable colleagues and the judiciary and all the distinguished persons here this evening, especially the family of Angela and Angela herself. A pleasant good evening to all of you. A pleasant good evening to all of you. Thank you very much. I did have a prepared speech, but I think I will spare you reading that, and I'll just share a couple of thoughts. You know, there's a saying that if you've been to war and you have returned, you have a story, and people will listen. I think all of us in this room have a story, whether you were in the BVI or out of the BVI, all of us have a story. And one of our distinguished educators in the room, Dr. Charles Willie, have always lamented that we're not recording people. We don't write enough to keep our history alive. And so I want to stand here this evening to congratulate Angela on this mammoth task that she has undertaken. We were in Bonn, Germany together a couple of weeks ago attending the COP23 on climate change. And she had a soft launch, she said, of the Irma Diaries. Unfortunately, we had a scheduling conflict, so neither myself nor Joseph Abbott-Smith were able to attend with her. So we missed out on the event in Bonn, but we were there in spirit supporting her. And so although I was supposed to be, you know, the premier, you see him keep coming and going, and I'm missing out on the meeting where I'm supposed to be, but I have to be here to support Angela because of this memorable occasion that we are celebrating here this afternoon. I've done my little part with respect to trying to preserve and protect our environment. The BVI, some of you may or may not know, has distinguished itself as not just a regional leader, but an international leader and an international voice in the area of environmental protection and management, and more specifically with respect to the issues surrounding climate change. I've had the opportunity, the privilege, and the responsibility for helping to ensure that these issues remain at the forefront locally, regionally, and internationally. But most of what I've said, both regionally and internationally, have always been written by people like Angela and Tessa Smith in the back there, and Joseph Abbott-Smith. Those are the real champions. I happen to be the mouthpiece. And so I'm delighted to really be here to celebrate with Angela this achievement this afternoon, because as the chairman was saying, Angela is our climate change guru. Anything to do in the ministry with climate change, it's Angela. She was the person who helped to champion and move forward the climate change policy that we have established, one of the first in the region. She was the driving force. I must pause to tell you that the people at the Caribbean Climate Change Center in Belize hold Angela in the highest of esteem with respect to the work that is done on climate change. And so our Climate Change Trust Fund, the legislation that was passed, as was just pointed out, nobody else in the region has passed a similar piece of legislation as of yet. And it was people like Angela and Tessa who helped to engineer that, although I took it through the House and had the legislation passed. What is significant about that legislation is that that legislation gives us a framework to be able to access some of the international funding that is available with respect to the issues of environmental management and more specifically climate change. It is not an easy task when you hear people talking about contributing funds to these various entities. The legalities of it will cost you our budget just to be able to access it. But we are one step ahead because we now have a framework under which we can be able to access the funds. We continue to work with international consultants and the relevant individuals to help us to move in that direction. So Angela's small contribution to the fund is one step forward to ensure that the fund is not only established, but that over time it will be sustainable. Our environmental levy that we are going to impose, and we were hoping to have started already, is another mechanism by which that fund will be capitalized, because events like these that we have just come through will be able to benefit from the monies that we will accumulate in the trust fund. And if what they tell us internationally, the monies are in such large volume, if we get our hand on a small percentage of that, we'll be able to rebuild our country in a short space of time if we get access to that funding. But we are one step ahead and one step down the road in being able to achieve that. And most of that work and most of the kudos for that work goes to Angela. So we have an international star with us this afternoon, and somebody who continues to help to put the BVI. Someone who continues to help to put the BVI on the map. We are a co-chair of an organization called GLISPA. It's the Global Islands Partnership. We co-chair that organization with the countries of Seychelles in the Indian Ocean, the state of Palau in the Pacific Ocean, the country of Grenada in the Caribbean. We are the only non-independent country that is involved at the level of the chairmanship of that organization that now encompasses and understand this, why it is significant. Because the Global Islands Partnership, it has nothing to do with nation, it has to do with islands. So even the island of Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, the islands are a part of GLISPA. There are islands in Korea that are a part of GLISPA. All over the world, the islands, once you live on an island, you're part of an island community. You have come together to form this partnership, and it is rising in influence in terms of how it can be able to command respect with effects like what has happened to us here with Irma. And it is in no small part the work of people like Angela, through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, that have brought us to this position. So I want to join my voice here this afternoon in really congratulating Angela and to say it has been a real pleasure of mine to work with people like her in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor to ensure, I think by now most of you know how passionate I am about the environment, to ensure that our natural resources, our environment is protected. One last point and I'm done. No matter what we do, if this country has a future, if it has any future at all, it is the protection of our environment. And the continued elevation in understanding, protecting, and preserving our environment makes our future bright. Because as I have said and continue to say, there's no tourism without the environment, and all of us know the part that tourism plays. Congratulations, Angela. God bless you all. God continue to bless these islands.
Thank you, Dr. Pickering. Well said. So we have passion at the leadership level and passion at the activist level. And I must say, I look at my friend Albert Wheatley, I didn't know you were on the list, Albert. But we have some very good conversations, and one of the things we said that all things work together for good. And we have a climate change champion, a climate change trust fund, a climate change activist, a climate change book. We have a nation to rebuild, and the minister said there's lots of money out there. So I think everything has come together, Minister, and we just have to get ourselves together and rebuild the BVI. We have apologies from the Honorable Minister for Education, but we do have his Permanent Secretary here, Dr. Marcia Pata, so I invite her to come and share the remarks of the Minister.
Protocol established, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's not an easy task to speak after hearing all the former speakers, but it is indeed an honor for me this evening to represent the Minister, Honorable Myron Walwyn. As you heard, Premier and Deputy Premier just say they're in a meeting discussing important business on recovery. So he's unable to be present, and he's very sad that he can't be here. He was really looking forward to being here and celebrating with Angela. So I'm just going to give brief remarks, and it's not the minister's remarks, it's my remarks representing. Hurricanes Irma and Maria have taken the Virgin Islands to a place few, if any, thought we would be at this time in our history. We were taken back to a time in our history when we had to do without many of the present-day luxuries we have become so accustomed to. And as I deal with the young people in school, the constant cry is, how soon are we going to get internet? The internet is not stable. When are we going to be able to get electricity to use a microwave and so on, or to get back on the TV? We have seen devastation never before seen in our lives, and my own thought coming out after Irma was that we had experienced a bomb like Syria. The stories told across the length and breadth of this territory have been amazing, and as I read the sneak peek online of Angela's book, I thought about my own experience and relived some of the stories I have heard along the way so far. And like Angela, I have cried and I have laughed hearing some of these stories. I want to take the opportunity this evening to thank and congratulate you, Angela, for putting pen to paper and publishing this awesome diary, chronicling the passage of Irma in the Virgin Islands, and even more importantly, for underscoring the importance of climate change and where our thoughts ought to be. Thank you for your contribution to our VI writings. Thank you for being part of our local authors and ensuring that our stories are told, and thank you for sharing with us this evening. It is my hope that through the pages of this book, the present and future generations of Virgin Islanders, visitors to our shores, and others around the world will gain knowledge of our experience during this difficult time, understand the resilience we have as a people, and more importantly, understand the importance of taking care of our environment. Thank you, and my sincere congratulations to you.
Before I depart, I think the vote of thanks will be done by Angela herself. I would like to again give my congratulations to you, Angela, on your outstanding work. I said you are a rising star. You've gotten a rocket now to propel you into the stratosphere, but certainly it's a very important cause for the BVI. I'd like to invite Dr. Charles Whitley, the chairman of the board of HLSCC, to come and share some closing remarks with us. Dr. Whitley?
I would like to just say congratulations to Angela for what she had accomplished. Now, why I tell you this, and I'm going to let you have a secret. The same inspiration she had, I had. But let me go further. What I had done is I have a team of about 14 people at the college now working on this. Not necessarily going in the same direction that has gone in climate change. But in terms of recording the experiences, and more than the experiences, the whole issue, the whole of the experience surrounding the hurricane, the hurricanes. Because I am passionate about the fact that we do not record enough of our own experiences, and we rely too much on reading other people's experiences, and then we cannot defend our own as well as we should. So from that point of view, you beat me. And I'm very, very proud of you, and thank you very much for what you have done. It is something that I love. I'm passionate about it, and I hope that there will be more activities to bring out, because there's a lot of information about the hurricane yet to come out, and there are a lot of experiences yet to be shared. So I think what you have started, we will continue to work on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wheatley. And you can never record too much. So, as you said, there's lots to record. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Angela back up to give a vote of thanks.
Good evening again. I'm going to start by acknowledging that this is a very high-risk task, because with such a long list of people to go through, I know I will forget somebody invariably and accidentally, so please forgive me in advance. Firstly, the audience for coming out and supporting the book and supporting me in the launch. Thank you for being here. You could have definitely been at home before the darkness set in, so thank you. I need to thank God, because I have been through an amazing set of experiences trying to write this book, and without him, I would not have been able to pull it off. And there are many others. For the book itself, I've had several contributors, 4 men in particular I want to mention. Firstly, my old undergraduate advisor, Dan Pullman, on the far right. I called him up about 3 weeks ago to tell him I was simply writing this book, and that I wanted him to give a little commentary on the back of the book. Well, he got super excited, and on his own offered to do line edits. And I had sent him a rough draft, and in one of his emails, early emails to me, he offered to go to Costco's quickly and buy me a box of commas. The book had not gone through editing as yet. Anyway, he's been a tremendous support and put me on to Professor Kerry Emanuel. We were on the phone for about 2 hours one evening with him, giving me lots and lots of advice. So Professor Kerry Emanuel, he's at MIT, and he's very specialized. He's spent his career studying the physics of hurricanes. Now, I have great respect for him, now that I know who he is and what he does. And I Googled him as soon as I heard, and found a presentation that he recently gave at MIT since Irma, specifically talking about climate change and stronger hurricanes. At the beginning of the presentation, he sort of complained about how he was being hounded by the media and lots of others in the wake of Irma, people who are interested in understanding the connections. So I watched his hour-and-a-half presentation, and at the end of it I said, right, I'm going to email him anyway and hound him myself. So to my surprise, I emailed him, I think, on a Friday. Saturday, I checked my inbox, and there's a response from Professor Emanuel agreeing to write the foreword for the Irma Diaries. And so I'm very happy to have sort of a heavy weight on the topic, lending credence to these connections. Then there's Michael Taylor, Dr. Michael Taylor, our own champion from the Caribbean. He heads up the climate studies group at the University of West Indies in Jamaica, and he's really leading the science in the Caribbean, helping to downscale the global models and help us in the Caribbean understand what our future climate is really going to look like. And he has contributed the afterword to the book. And then there is Dr. Ulrich Trotz of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. I've really grown up under him. He's like my grandfather, really. And he has also written a lovely commentary on the book. And there are many others. I don't know if I'll get them all, but I have to mention my sister Tanya. She has been my editor and has done a brilliant job at this. Now, she lives in Dominica, which has been ravaged by Hurricane Maria. So how she even pulled this off, I'm still trying to understand. I wish I could share a picture of her or us together, but as I tried to find one, I realized that they were all taken in bikinis. So I couldn't necessarily share one this evening, but she has really been tremendous. She's been beyond an editor. She's really been a true sister and an amazing support to this entire process. From day one, when I messaged her and said, Tanya, I have this great idea. I'm going to write the Irma Diaries, and you're going to write the Maria Diaries. So the Maria Diaries have not happened as yet, but she's been amazing. Then there's Kamal Letsam. Kamal, I want you to stand. Kamal has been my photographer and graphic artist. And everything in between. I don't know how he's put up with me over the last 2 to 3 months. Kamal, we still have one more all-nighter to pull tonight, and then you're off the hook. But seriously, if you ever need a graphic artist, he's amazing to work with. I don't think I would have pulled this off without him and him being crazy enough to do this with me. So Kamal, thank you. Miss Anna Durant, who works at my both aunts' law firm. She has provided some good legal counsel to make sure my copyright and other things are well in place. So Ms. Durant, thank you very much. And of course, all of the contributors of the survivor stories. This book would not exist without them opening up their hearts and sharing with me. So that's the people who have really contributed to the book. Then there are lots of people who have helped me sort of promote this along the way. My soft launch in Germany was made possible by the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, along with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center in Belize. The launch here, of course, has been greatly facilitated by the BVI International Arbitration Center, so I thank you again for graciously allowing us to be here this evening in your space. The Department of Culture has partnered in this launch, and I want to thank you, Ms. Luz Hodge-Smith and your entire team. You've worked tirelessly with me, along with the Department of Government Information Services, Bria and others on the team who've sat with me, helped promote this event, etc. I have to make special mention of Dame Peters. I see him all the way in the back. Dame and I were complete strangers up until about 2 months ago. One of my survivors told him about what I was doing, and he came up to me and said, I'm going to make a promotional video for you for free. And he did. So Dame, we're going to play that video at the end of this session. But Dame, thank you so much. You remind me of the goodness that is still left in people. And I should mention quickly, Dame is producing a video about Hurricane Irma, so when it comes out, please support that as well. Troy Dawson, who's also somewhere in the back of the room. I think I called Troy on like a Sunday night. I said, Troy, I'm building a website. I need an interactive map. I need it by Wednesday. Thanks. And somehow he delivered. So Troy, thank you very much. Then I have many secret supporters. One of them I see in the room tonight, Mr. Barry Leon, who's been tremendous in, I think, telling everybody he knows about this book and making me some amazing connections within and outside of BVI. So Barry, thank you very much for your support. And then there are, of course, my family and my friends. To my family first, I think Kedrick, you described them as an army of ants. I secretly call you guys the mafia. You don't know this, but well, over the last few weeks, they have allowed me to, without any protest or anything, they've allowed me to turn them into event planners, editors, everything that I needed to get through this book. We've sat around the table for editing parties, and invariably one of us would be asleep at any given time. But they've really stuck by my side. My mom was with me for my soft lunch in Germany, and they are my biggest fans. So I know we've had moments of high tension and stress along this journey, but it's all love, and I thank you all for your support. I have to mention my cousin Nellie, who traveled all the way here from St. Thomas. I remember meeting Nellie because she was always that cousin who would come for any family event, and that's how I know her. I know her very well, so she's always been a tremendous support. Then I don't know if I should put her in the list of friend or family, because she's both. My niece, cousin, and friend, Natasha Whitley, who's somewhere in the room. Ah, there she is. Natasha has been my stylist. Whenever she's finished with me, I never recognize myself. So after 3 months of sleepless nights, she managed to make me look presentable today. So thank you very much, Natasha. To my very best friends, Lynette and Dee, who are somewhere in the audience. They've been the secret ones behind executing this whole evening with my family, as well as Alicia John, who should be somewhere in the room. So I really want to thank you for all your hard work. I know I have no idea all of the things that you actually did behind the scenes. So thank you very much. And I know I'm forgetting people, but I also want to wrap up. So lastly, I think I'll just speak to, and without calling names necessarily, a number of people have allowed me to invade their space to write this book. I don't know if he's in the room tonight, but I specifically want to mention Keith Smith. Reason being, I have basically lived for a great deal of this, or I should say my second home has been at the sewage treatment plant. Yes, the sewage treatment plant in Roetown. Hey, they have a reliable source of power and good, safe company. You know, what else does a girl need? So Keith has graciously, he heads the plant, and he's allowed me to be there until curfew, past curfew, handed me a few curfew passes. He's really facilitated me in doing this work. So Keith, if you're in the room, thank you very much. All right, I am scanning my list, and my apologies if I've forgotten anyone, but for all of those who know that you've contributed in any way, even if it was to say, you know, congratulations, keep it up, good work, thank you so much for all your support. And with that, I invite you now to the cocktail reception, and invite you to support the book by buying your gift certificates. So as I said before, the hard copy should be on island sometime in January, and Jeanette, right there in the audience from Serendipity, if you're not able to make your purchase tonight, or if you want to hand on the great idea that somebody else should purchase the book, Serendipity has graciously offered to allow us to continue to accept offers at their location on Main Street. So thank you very much for that, Jeanette. All right.